Well, hi there. I am so glad that you've come to join me today on this rather uh, unusual, out of the way lesson. And how, in fact, can we understand the values of this for today? There's lots been said on it, and we're going to deal with this encounter that they have on the top of the mountain together. But I want to share with you a little bit more about breakthrough pathways and what it means and where it's going. We're dealing with the higher level of things on this podcast, generally speaking. We'll also deal with the lower level things. And we're trying to identify what we have identified, many of the pathways that people take from being ordinary, just kind of sitting in the crowd, Christians or maybe Christians, and taking them one step at a time towards the glory that we're looking at here. You know, people have looked for glory in a lot of ways. And they look for the new hot pasture, the new thing, the new system. People always like new. I asked in advertising, they, I was going to call him a guru, but a man who worked for Walmart to create their advertising. And I asked him, what were some of the words that made a difference in the ads? And his first word that he came up with was the word new. It's the word new, when people always like something new. Now, when Jesus burst on the scene with the gospel, he said, "This is new." Yeah, he didn't say those words, but that's what he said. And it was really quite life-changing, but it took a long time for the disciples to get it. And it takes a long time today for people to get it because they're always looking for the shiny object, the big thing. And most of what is done in ministry is not pretty. It's not outstanding. And when you have an outstanding moment, you need to cling to the memory of it. I was told by a deacon who was very old, he's gone to be with the Lord, lived over 100 years. He told me once that in a deacon's meeting early on when we were starting a church, I had said to the guys, it doesn't get any better than this. And I look back upon it, and I've had moments that were as good, but it didn't get any better than that. And he looked back on his life of serving the Lord and his ups and downs and trials and everything else. And he remembered that I had said that. And he looked back after 40, maybe, I don't know how many years it was, years, and said, you were right. It didn't get any better than that. And it doesn't get any better than that. When you have one of those seasons in life when things go really, really well, take the pictures. You're going to need them. Actually, when somebody says, that was really special, I get them to write it down and stick it in a file folder. You're going to need it. It's going to be difficult for you. Well, we're going to work through some things on the Transfiguration. Really, I'm calling it encounter here in this lesson because that's really what it was. But I want to tell you a little bit about how I go about making this all. First of all, I start with this base, my radio book, and this is where we are, where that clip is. We're getting there. We're more than a third of the way through, and Lord willing, we'll get through the whole thing. But I take that out of that. I honestly get it's too boring for me to read it in here. That's why I decided I'd have to go and use modern tools to fix it up. So what I did, uh, I went to. By the way, if you're looking for what artificial intelligence things to use, Claude.ai demonstrates itself to be the best at understanding the theology of evangelicals, and anything that it does, it puts vocabulary that I prefer as opposed to all the others. I'm using like I've always used ChatGPT since it came out, and DeepSeek. DeepSeek is the one you want to use if you want to get more done for free. Anyway, I did this with Claude, and I took I'll call it chapter 19 here, but it was chapter 13 in the original. And I said, for example, look at this chapter and give me some good titles for it. I know that you won't be able to read them, but it gave me these titles. And they're all, it's quite amazing. It's how it read it and figured it out and gave me a chapter summary. It's this chapter summary. And I've copied it all over into photos. The summary is not that long. And then I was preparing for today. I went back and I think I went to Claude and I said, there's the chapter. Give me a summary of it. There it is. And what I've learned is you can go and take anybody's book and you see, oh, I might want to buy that book. If you go to one of these artificial intelligence things and so tell me the major concepts of so-and-so's book, give you the outline of the book, and then you can decide whether you want to buy it. Now, the other thing that I've done with it is I have this long file. This is the entire rendering of A.B. Bruce's work in more modern English. And then I went through and I asked it to give me subtitles for all of the parts. This makes it so much easier to read. This particular chapter is well over 3,000 words long, which is quite significant. So there are ways that you can improve upon your understanding and your study habits, and you can teach others to do so as well. And I would really encourage you to not resist the world as it is, and that is the world of artificial intelligence. But get on the bus now. I remember how long, 25, 30 years ago, some of my pastor's friends said, no, I don't need to learn computers. I'm going to have my secretary, call them assistant today, do that for me. It's beneath my dignity. And then they came along years later and said, I better figure out this computer thing. And so they said, well, I'm going to, when I'm on vacation, take some time and I'm going to learn the computer. You have no idea what you just said. And it's so important that we keep with the world as it is, not as it was. And as it will be, we have to tilt ourselves 45 degrees towards tomorrow, while at the same time standing straight and tall today, and at the same time remembering all the good of yesteryear. One of the things that we have, those of us who are aging, is that we just stop growing. And it's an assumption that younger people have that an old guy like me, I'm 80 years old, I would have stopped growing and would be out of touch. Well, then once they get to know me, they say, well, you're more in touch than a 50-year-old that I know. Well, as long as my brain holds out, my body holds out, I intend to stay with the program. And I'm trusting that you will too. And I'm quite sure that that's what Jesus wanted with his disciples. Didn't intend to say all that, but I did. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to jump into the Transfiguration. Going to have to take a whirlwind tour of it with this time around. Okay, so the story of the Transfiguration is, as with many stories, not recorded by John, but recorded by Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And you can go and read it. I put the references here. My goodness, you can find it. And he takes his three people. Now, I want to come back to that. He doesn't take the 12 or the 120, because there were more disciples than there were the 12 apostles. He takes three of them with him up the mountain. He doesn't declare that he knows what's going to go on up the mountain as he takes them up there. And that's an interesting little piece of the story that is left out. I would think that they'd say, well, Jesus, where are we going? We're not even sure what the mountain was. Many speculate it's Mount Hermon. I don't really care. But it's difficult to climb a mountain. And as they're climbing the mountain, you can be sure that Jesus is having an intimate conversation with these three key disciples. We're going to come back to the three part. Now, we have this unusual miracle experience at the top. Jesus' face glows, and Moses and Elijah appear. And they have this discussion about his impending death. So it's this. There it is. When they're up on the mountain, Moses, Elijah, and Jesus, and the presence of the other three are talking about his impending death. And Jesus, on the way there, was praying for strength to endure what was going to be coming. And it's a similar concept to his prayer in Gethsemane. And if Jesus needed to pray about the tough things that are coming, so do you and I. It's very important for us to talk to our Father about the trials and the difficulties and the valleys we're through. And when we feel like quitting and we feel like saying, let this cup pass from me, we have to develop the ability ourselves to be the example before the others around us that we are ready, willing to follow Jesus to the end. Now, this encounter that they're having was an encouragement for Jesus to just keep going. And there was this heavenly reassurance in the voice from heaven that this was the path that he had to have. And if you need heavenly reassurance, then I'm quite confident that God will give it to you in some way. Recall early in my ministry, I had a situation where the church had decided that they would continue the relationship with us. And I subsequently found out that most guys who hit that, they just go up for Walmart. They give up. That wasn't what Wendy and I did. But we were living in an apartment. It was actually above a pool hall, and there was this rickety old staircase up the back. And the front door was old. We never used it. We always came up the back. And after the church had decided not to renew our situation, and we were there like deer caught in the headlights, not knowing what to do. A lady in the church who wasn't especially prominent in the church, she brought us a plaque. I don't think she had the time to go buy it. She brought this plaque, and it was a very ordinary plaque. And she came up and expressed her grief for us and her hope that we would keep on going. And that was a moment that God ordained. I'm quite sure that the Spirit of God nudged her along the way, and she did what was difficult, to come and find the place where we lived and come up the rickety old staircase, knock on our kitchen door. And she only stayed for a few minutes. She didn't come in and sit down, and I'm not even sure what I said to her. And I've long since forgotten her name. But I remember what a comfort that was to me in my ministry, and for Wendy as well. And I'm quite sure that if you're in one of those situations and you ask the Lord for his guidance and his help, he'll supply somebody like that lady, or some circumstance, or some, maybe, you're climbing a mountain, right? See the sunrise, or something. He will speak to you through those things. I've never heard about a voice. I've only talked to a few people who've said it was as if it was audible. It was so strong. And I don't know that I could get to that level of assurance of God's speaking in any particular event in my life. I recall a few times when it was really unusual. But the Lord will give you the strength for the journey if you will stay faithful. So there's Moses, the lawgiver, and Elijah, the prophet. And these are things that Jesus builds on. Peter, James, and John had built upon them. You can imagine it. Just total wonderment about what's going on. But they validated Jesus' mission. God gave his voice of approval. Only twice is it recorded in scriptures that he did this from heaven, where he at his baptism and at this situation, which are bookmarks that help us understand that Jesus is in fact the chosen one. Now, I have my coffee here. It's my chosen coffee cup. And you can see it's all the stuff's coming off the top. Maybe you don't want to buy this. I appreciate so much what Dallas Jenkins and his crew has done in creating The Chosen. You might not think it's perfect, but it's the most perfect rendering of the life of Jesus that I have ever seen, is my opinion. And I would encourage you to encourage others to do what you can with the modern things that are available, such as that, and bring them before people. It's not like a special appearance up on a mountain, but it can be very special for every individual. And I want you to bear that in mind. So this voice from heaven says, listen, Peter, James, and John. And then they don't listen. And Peter wants to build tabernacles. He wants to stop the clock in the heavenly moment. Don't do that to yourself. Whatever the peak in your life, Don't look back upon it. If you won the championship and it's worked out well, so what? Move on, move on. It's going to be pain that follows. It's not always going to be up in the top. And I understand that in baseball terms, I don't have this direct quote, but the Yogi Berra, I like Yogi Berra's weird statements, but this was one of them. Apparently, he said that it's so true. Losing feels worse than winning feels good. And we love the winning feelings, and we don't like losing feelings. And you're going to have grief. You're going to have losses. It's not always going to work out. And what has happened here is that Jesus has bookended this experience with the disciples, Peter, James, and John, who are going to have to be the key ones to carry it forward. He had predicted his death. They went to this glorious moment. Peter wanted to stop the clock, but he was only really preparing himself and them for what would follow as he went to Jerusalem to face the cross. But he keeps on serving when he comes down from the mountain. He does some healing. He keeps working, listening, serving. And I say to you, the so what for you is share with three. Three at a time, three in a lifetime. I don't particularly have a way to measure that. But Jesus worked with this narrow crowd and apparently spent special time with them. As you go, you may not have three at a time, you may not have one, but you look for the one, the two, or the three who are especially responsive to your perspective in life and ministry and lead them forward. As I look back upon my work in churches over the last 60 years, I have noticed that it's very rare that people say, I'm a disciple of XYZ pastor. But I have known a few men down through the years who picked up so much in a humble attitude where they were servants of the church and they were serving because the pastor had taught them how, but never enough. And particularly, I have not noticed that the deacon types in the church actually find some people to lead with them, people to take along with them on the journey of life, whether they're digging holes or traveling in the car, or just take them along and talk with them about loving Jesus and what it means to follow him. I didn't do as good a job down through the years as I wish I had have done in working with some of those, I call them deacon types, who were men on the board. It seems to me that so many people who want to serve on church boards want to kind of sit back and be like commentators in a sporting event to say who did what good, who missed out on things, and so on. They're not there to be commentators. They're there to develop their lives as servants. So you have to teach them how to serve, and you give them one opportunity at a time that's at their size of capacity, and then you stretch them a little further, and then you ask them to take over the control and the oversight of some particular ministry, and then you have them take oversight of two things, and so on, until you raise them up to the place where they can replace you in ministry. It's complicated and it's difficult, and I don't claim that I did as well as I should have done, but I didn't know as much as I know now. And I wish I knew it then, and I wish there was somebody there who could say, no, pick those few people, and don't just go hunting with them, but as you're out there, be in the fishing boat with them, and by all means go hunting and fishing with them. Say, you know what? And then teach them something about life and ministry. It makes a huge difference to these people. You just think of it as talking shop. It's not talking shop to them. It's a very important thing that you have that kind of an attitude, that you can give what you've got. And you might not think you've got a lot to give, but you can be quite sure if you're a few steps ahead of them, you've got more to give than you know you have to give. And if you walk humbly with your God, and if you seek to be faithful in service, and you don't just sit around and talk about it, but you don't let all these intentions turn into indecision and inactivity, but you take that intention that you have in life, and you say, I'm going to leave it all out there on the field. I'm not taking anything back into the dressing room. I'm going to give it all I've got. And when you do that, you may have moments that are glorious, like the Transfiguration. You may not. And what I'll guarantee you is you will have very few of those special moments that you have. If you stack them all end to end, they're going in your life and you measure them by virtue of the time or the season. It's going to be like maybe 20 minutes of glory that you experienced. Those are precious moments. Hang on to those moments, those transfiguration moments. Understand that life is lived on the plain and sometimes in the valley. And when you follow him, he will do all things well. Well, that's probably enough for today's lesson. I skipped a lot of things that I was going to say, but I promise you that I will do my best to turn this into a physical book for you that you can cogitate on it as we get there. But I'm not going to get that done until the end of this year. But I'm on track. I'm on track to get that done in 2025. Don't get sick, and if something doesn't intervene and so on, it will happen for you and for many others, and I hope thousands of others. But to me, it only matters if I got 3.